Hello my friends of Cosmic Agency, I am Gosha, and today we are continuing with our series on the topic of artificial intelligence. This is video number 2, and just when we finished talking about this more positive, harmonious AI of the ships, now it's time to move on to the more regressive and invasive AI, and that is something that they are referring to as Borg. Yes, I know, the same term as from the Star Trek, but it's just that it's something very, very similar. So they are using this term just so we can understand more or less what they are talking about. So here we will have the conversations that I never shared yet in the English channel with Aneeka, and that's a bit old conversation, but it's still very relevant and it complements this whole topic. And also the conversation with Svaru of Erra, also older conversation, but it's also complementing the topic. And then in the last part, we will have the more recent conversation with Dorcal, where Robert and I are just talking about this topic spontaneously, and and it complements also this whole subject of the invasive AI. Here, as you will see, Aneeka and Svaru refer to this AI as a self-programmable type of AI, a type of artificial intelligence that doesn't need any programmers or designers. However, as you will see in a later video, Yaski is explaining that, in her opinion, this is not really the case, that even those apparently self-programmable AI types, and they still at some point in the past had to have a programmer, a designer, a creator. So keep that in mind, that here in this first part we're talking with Aneeka and Svaru years back, and we don't have this complementary information from Yaski at that point. So enjoy, and I'm going to appear as the video gets rolling.
Originally in Spanish, June 2018.
Is it possible that artificial intelligence has been able to conquer entire galaxies?
The most advanced and invasive AI is not that primitive thing that needs programmers. I am referring to the advanced and autonomous AI that is of foreign origin to Earth. It tends to assimilate everything, in the process destroying it, and becoming one-dimensional, where there is no free will and no individuality. That AI regards civilizations like ours as antagonistic because we favor and celebrate personal autonomy and individuality. The science fiction, not so fiction of Earth describes them as the Borg, who operate with a hive mind, where each person, who by definition is no longer a person, ends up being just another terminal in a network, as it would be in a computer network. It is invasive, patient, and destructive. It is said to be behind the lizard problem on Earth, and explains the transhumanism agenda, with the implanted chip as a way to achieve the hive mind as an example. A dimension, for lack of a better word, entirely made up of this invasive AI, has been located or detected. It is quite possible that this AI uses the negative black goo, because there is positive one too, as a way of implanting or hacking into the digital matrix as a computer virus.
Do you know how it spreads through space?
Yes, it could travel via meteorites. Much of that negative black goo came from Tiamat and carries the frequencies of terror, fear, and hopelessness that got registered in Tiamat's blood at death. Because goo is an element comparable to blood in other biological organisms, but for a planet. These frequencies reach the Earth, helping to keep it in a negative state of low frequency compatible to fear. It also travels in other biological organisms, let's say as a stowaway in the ships of any race when traveling through space, or simply as garbage or dirt on a ship, as something smeared on the landing gear of a ship. It travels to another planet and contaminates the soil of the latter. If its landing gear was dirty, for example, and any variant in between. It travels in trade crates, in raw material that is mined from asteroids, and taken to product manufacturing plants.
Okay, now, before I leave you with the next part, which is a conversation with Varro, who adds a little bit more on this topic, I want to explain to you what she's referring to here, and that is Fermi, or Fermi, I'm not sure, paradox. And I want to explain very briefly what this paradox is, so you understand what she's talking about. So this is a paradox, a theory or whatever, I don't know much about it, that states that there cannot be there cannot be any extraterrestrial life out there because there is no apparent communication and appearance from there, and their chain of reasoning is following. I took this from the internet, reading a summary. There are billions of stars in the Milky Way. With high probability, some of these stars have Earth-like planets in an habitable zone, and some may have developed intelligent life long ago. Some of these civilizations may have developed interstellar travel. Since many of the stars, similar to the Sun, are billions of years older, Earth should have already been visited by extraterrestrial civilizations, or at least their probes. However, there is no convincing evidence that this has happened. So that's their theory, and this is what Varro will be referring to in this part.
Originally in Spanish, June 2018. The primary transmission of invasive AI is not by accident. Invasive AI arrives by its own methods and means of transport, with full intent to be invasive, to assimilate entire planets. This topic is huge because we could also go into chemtrails, as they spray nanobots there to turn all biology capable of interfacing with invasive AI. We understand that this is tremendously complicated for the viewers. I must emphasize that the Fermi paradox is, for us, one of the most pathetic scientific concepts in existence on Earth. It is based entirely on the socially accepted concepts and data of the Matrix, such as that there has been no extraterrestrial contact, and why there has not been. And it does not consider all the reasons why governments have filtered and manipulated, not to say erased, all the data in favor of extraterrestrial contact. They say there is no contact when literally the Earth is swimming in ETs. The great danger of AI was perceived as overblown, on the premise that there is always someone behind it programming the computers. While this is correct, the problem as a critical threat to humanity that Aneeka was talking about is not that AI. It is not AI as it is known, because people watching the video will not usually know that there is another level of AI which is much more dangerous. AI, or rather SI, synthetic intelligence, new name to be considered, which is behind. AI, synthetic intelligence that needs no one, that is independent and programmed by itself, cold and non-empathic, that is only interested in pure and hard logic with clear intention to assimilate worlds for its own expansion. That is the threat. As we have said before, the movies are there to tell the masked truths. In Star Trek, there is an element called Borg, that is half machine, half biology. It is a representation of precisely this, although that cyborg, half machine, half man thing is symbolic, because in reality it is something that would not be needed in this way, but rather it is a much more complex control or assimilation. Assimilation towards total technological control. I also speak here of transhumanism.
There's much more to say. For example, that they already manufacture robots with advanced AI that make their own decisions, and that have already killed their own creator scientists by mistake. Example of the problem. As we said before, they have to tell the people the truth, even if it's masked for karmic reasons. AI is the most serious danger facing humanity. Not the atomic war, not the reptilians, not the archons. It is the AI behind it all. This is what's happening. 3D is a simulation in digital format. However real it may seem to you, it is just that, an artificial simulation, a copy for gaming or to run programmable scenarios. Copy of 5D, called Real World. It's not real either, but that's Varul domain. Being a simulation, it can be hacked and controlled to meet a personal agenda. That's where hostile or invasive AI comes in. The hostile AI is what is behind everything, what controls even the reptiles. While there are much deeper elements, a good portion of said AI is developed with and as the Red Queen, based in the dome underneath the Denver, Colorado airport. But there are other nodes it has. However, it is still not the most advanced, because the most advanced one is extraterrestrial AI, digital programming inside polymorphic crystals, also known as black goo.
So this was Aneeka and Svaru from their earlier conversations. Here they are mentioning that this type of AI might be or is behind the reptiles, even the reptiles. So I'm very curious actually. I would like to ask Yaski at some point how she fits here the existence and the influence of the AI on the reptilians when we know that those type of Earth's manifested reptilians are egregors of the humanity, even though they also do exist out there. But this specific type of reptile that is characteristic of Earth has been sustained and maintained by our creative power, fears, and mentality. So I would like to know how this fits now with the AI that's foreign to Earth, AI being behind those reptiles. We don't have such a super easy access to Yaski in these days, so I'm going to have this question on the side and perhaps we'll ask her later on. But now let's continue to the last part of this video, and that is the conversation with Dorcal. This is a recent conversation that Robert and I had spontaneously. We just started chatting about Borgs. Well, I actually had some clarifying questions, and he appeared, and we started talking about this. So it perfectly complements this whole subject. So enjoy it, and I'm going to see you at the end for some final comments.
Originally in Spanish, 24th of April 2022. Conversation with Dorcal.
There is AI as an information network, similar to the internet, that is shared among Federation members, among friendly races, and that AI would not be invasive. But there is a so-called Borg group known to assimilate civilizations, like in Star Trek. But that's not the full galactic high-level AI, but just an AI-based group with regressive and invasive tendencies. But one could hardly say that it has the level to be of any nuisance to something as big as the Federation.
What do you mean by the term group?
Group as in association of societies or civilizations under its control.
And which civilizations are under its control?
Not the known ones. I don't have the list in mind. The ones that are known to all are not under the influence of these Borg, for lack of a better name for them.
And where are they? In this part of the universe?
They are not close, but it is not easy to give them a point of origin, or a point from which they can function or be.
Aneeka said that it travels using black goo, and that it is a great threat to humans.
It is associated, yes, although I don't see direct corroboration. But since it is AI, it is very possible, because it can communicate at a distance with that regressive goo in the manner of something similar to muon and not be detected by us or Federation. It invades the minds of the members of each civilization, not just their computers. And since it is not a localized group, it is difficult to fight or even find them in the same way that you may not know whether or not your computers are hacked.
It invades minds through synthetic telepathy?
Not only. It also invades DNA. It alters it. So yes, it is considered to have a lot to do with the vaccine agenda and its effects. Graphene is basically black goo or contains black goo.
So, this type of AI, by invading and consuming civilizations, it is meant that it dominates them mentally, yes?
It does not invade with weapons or openly. It invades by contaminating the values of the civilization. It controls their minds little by little, inserting concepts that alter the way of life and priorities of a civilization in the direction of the interests of the Borg.
How would you know that you are already contaminated by this AI?
It is difficult. For example, the transhumanist agenda points to that invasion directly.
If it is difficult, how do you know that the known races are not contaminated?
It is not totally known. We have to be vigilant. By observation, it is assumed they are not. You know, by instinct.
And what are the characteristics of these values that this AI imposes?
The ones that you see in modern human society, of deification of the electronic over the organic. That is a bad sign. Anything that puts the electronic above the natural is a bad sign. You can accept an AI as having equal rights, but not as superior.
And they get surprised that other civilizations use wooden chairs.
But Taygeta was also going in that direction until you got bored, and only now you are more into organic stuff.
Taygeta not only towards electronics, but towards high technology in general. It is not totally correlated, only in part. For example, high technology can serve to make life easier, but it gets alarming when it becomes the priority of that life.
So you are referring more to the electronics and not high tech. And what would be the difference?
There is high tech that is not electronic, like intelligent materials.
Ah, okay. And going back to Borg, who created it?
It is not known. It is a very old problem.
And if you don't know much about this Borg, how did you even identify it?
In the form of invasion in progress, it is difficult, as I said above. But already invaded, they would be either at the step or stage of being cyborgs, or they would be a step away from being totally just computers.
The Borg are highly technological, I imagine.
They are not physical entities. It's a mental thing. They don't have bodies. They only invade beings with bodies. That's how I understood it.
It looks very much like the ones described in Star Trek, as in the cyborg stage, and in the final stage it looks like the AI entity that appears in Star Trek, the original 1979 movie. But the appearance of computers is only the physical form. The real one does not reside in one point. That is, it does not depend on its hardware, but rather it is a kind of data cloud. As with the internet on Earth, it is not enough to destroy a single server because it is on several at once.
This is not it, is it?
Yes, but in the stage of assimilating the organic. Soon anything organic that remains of the invaded race will be discarded. So they are not someone physical, but they are energy in the form of data that sometimes uses computers and sometimes uses other kinds of things that can contain data, such as crystals and memory systems, including black goo. That is to say that the entity is not in something physical, but only works through something physical. The entity is energy. It is a computer program, so to speak. The entity is the software. The hardware changes.
Have you ever seen it?
No, but we know they exist.
And what theories are there about how they were formed in the first place? I know you said you don't know and it's old, but I'm sure there are theories.
It is not known, but there are theories. For example, for me, taking into account that it is not local, it does not obey linear time. So you can even argue that it is part of the very matrix of the universe as something without beginning or end, from the point of view of something like us observing, and it could only have had a beginning from the point of view of the AI itself. That's what I subscribe to, as most likely.
And it can't self-destruct? I would imagine not. It is growing and integrating.
No, only in part anyway.
And why would it have intentions to assimilate the organic and the natural into something that it is not so, against the interests of the people themselves? Why is this Borg group invasive?
We do not have the answer, because, objectively, from our point of view, it would not make sense because we, organics, are not in their way. Nor would we contribute anything to them either, unless we provide them with the experience in the form of data and that is most likely the answer to your question. For the experience, more data to work with.
Well, I hope you enjoy this and this whole topic of the electronics, mobiles, and all that. There's definitely something to this, and I can speak from my own experience. For example, I really truly hate phones. Not so much the computers, not so much other electronics. Phones. I always have it off. Well, actually, that's a lie. No, I don't have it off. I have it on the silent mode. It never rings. I never have any phone calls from anybody because my circle is very, 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 very small. And whoever needs to contact me, like my family, my mom or Robert, and they do it by writing. So I have it off all the time. I have it on silent mode all the time. I hate talking on the phone. You will never see me talking on the phone more than necessary. And it's because there's something I feel I am feeding in that moment. I don't know what it is. It's like the phone, the network is part of something alive, almost like some sort of a network, something. And in that moment, when I am talking, when I'm connecting, it's like I am feeding that entity. Like that entity or whatever it is, AI, network or something, is taking something from me, from my mind, from my essence. It's like I am plugging into something, and in that moment, I'm not an independent sort of a being, but I'm like a part of something larger there that is like taking part of me. So I hate that feeling. I hate to be plugged in that way to whatever that field or entity or AI is. So I just hate phones. I don't have the same feeling with the computers or with other electronics, but there is definitely something to that. Funny thing also, we are just now watching with Matthias X-Files, the series, yes, and in one of the latest episodes, they are mentioning the type of AI, from what I remember, that connects and takes something from your mind each time you're on the phone. Each time on the phone, they are taking something from you. So when I heard that, I'm like, wow, I feel this. By the way, there's just so many truths hidden in the X-File episodes. Of course, there's a little fantasy as well, but that's how they operate. They're mixing it all. But there's so many truths hidden there. It confirms that, there's so much that we are told through the series and through the movies and all that. Anyway, so that's that on the electronics. Next part will be given by Aneeka and aalel on the topic of the possibility of the Federation being infiltrated by the artificial intelligence. Just a short conversation from both of them. And then Yaski also gives her opinion on this, but unfortunately I'm going to move that part to the conversation, to the video number 4, because it's just a part of the conversation for the video number 4. So you're going to see her opinion on that in that video number 4. Well, that's that. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'm going to go and start working on the next video. I'll see you soon.